Hi, I'm Marty Rayjot. I'm chairman of the 20th Quilt Show for the Sulphur Springs Guild. My co-chair is Laura Tier, and she's going to be taking over my position next year. We're training her now.
In training.
This is our raffle quilt. We are selling it. The profits go to support some of the charities that we donate to, like Terrific Tuesdays, Heart of Hope, Child Advocacy, Senior Can Help, and CASA. That's just a few of the people that we support. This year's show, we have two special quilters. We have one of our members, or one of our dear members, who is an avid appliquer and a quilter, unfortunately passed this year, and so we have her very last quilt over here, which is a small one. She was learning a new technique. Her name is Melba Diamond, and she and her husband were very prominent in the community in Sulphur Springs. I'll show you the other one in a few minutes. This quilt is our best of show. This was won by somebody who is from out of town. She lives in Plano. So the misconception that only guild members win is just that. It's a misconception. We'll go down and we'll see some of the other quilts.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you like my
This was our very first raffle quilt, and it was won by our featured quilter, Cecilia Anderson, who we'll meet. This was in 1998. This quilt is a bed quilt, and it was given a second place ribbon by our judge. And it's a kind of traditional quilt. This was made by a guild member, Karen Keeler. And this is our featured quilter, Cecilia Anderson. She's one of our guild members. She is still quilting. And all of these quilts that we have here, she's done quite a bit of hand quilting and cross stitch, applique, and she quilts by machine as well. She's very good. She's an excellent quilter. And we'll see some of her other quilts over here. This quilt won a memorial award for a traditional quilt. It also won first place in this category, and the quilting was also awarded. This is a totally hand-done quilt that Cecilia made. And next to it is a quilt that she made that is pieced and has embroidery on it. This is the very last quilt that Cecilia has made. I'm sure she's on her way to doing more. Nothing stops that lady. And it's made from all of the patches from one of her sons. She somehow managed to get them attached, and so this will probably be his.
So wait a minute, this is made out of what?
Patches from the hats and shirts that he's worn over the years. Isn't that neat? It's very original.
Nothing ever goes to waste around a quilter,
Not a
does
quilter,
it?
no, nothing does go to waste. This blue and white quilt is also it's a very large bed quilt. It goes up higher than the pole, and it was made by one of our quilters who is also quite prolific, and this is a third place winner for a bed quilt. some of our some of our quilts are just very cute. This quilt over here that's in red and white is a third place quilt for, we split the category. The top was made by one person and it was quilted by another person. This quilt got a memorial award. It was picked out by one of our members in memory of her mother, who loved cats. This was originally a panel, and she cut it up and put her own twist on it. Here's a very interesting situation. This quilt is an old pattern. It's called Dear Jane, and it's all hand-pieced. It's a very difficult pattern to do. Each square is really small. Some people enlarge them, some people make them smaller. This quilt, which uses a fabric type called batiks, which are kind of new, got an honorable mention. And this quilt, which uses more traditional fabrics, was given a first place in this category. This is a category, again, that was pieced by one person and quilted by another. This quilt over here was given an honorable mention, and it was also given a quilting award. As you can see, the quilting varies from each space, and so it gives more of a dimension to the quilt, makes it more 3D. This quilt over here is from one of the applique quilts, and it was made by Melba Diamond, who is a lady who has passed that we are honoring. This quilt was also on her casket. It won a first place ribbon, and it also won the Pride of Downtown ribbon. This quilt is hand quilted. That's why we have the little hand over here that we put on it to draw attention to that. And that was third place in applique. This quilt also got an honorable mention, and it is also hand quilted. If you turn around, we'll go and look at this one. This was a bed quilt that is made in one of the traditional blocks called a log cabin block. This is a pretty difficult pattern. People always think it's easy, but it's not. But you'll notice that every single one of these strips is exactly the same, and although they're very straight, which is why it won a second place award in its category, which is two people quilt bedside. It won an award, a memorial award for Billy Root's husband who has passed, Billy Root Stambridge, and it also won an award for quilting. And this was the quilt that was picked out by the judge for the judges award. This quilt is also a very traditional quilt, and it's also made by one person, quilted by another, and it has an honorable mention. We don't give fourth place awards, so therefore we give honorable mentions. This is another applique quilt in a very traditional pattern of the baskets. The applique is done extremely well, and she added in flowers, which most of which are machine applique. This got a second place ribbon. This quilt is called Creative Chaos, and it is in the wall quilt category, so it's smaller than the quilts we've been looking at. And it got an honorable mention.
What you could do.
This is one of my personal favorites. This is called Rainbow Prismatic Star. It was made by a non-guild member. It got a second place award, and it also got an award for best use of color. This pattern is by a woman by the name of Judy Niemeyer, and she's known for, the technique is paper piecing, and this is a wall quilt.
So when you say a wall quilt, these are made for looking at.
Yes, exactly. They're placed on the wall. They're smaller than the bed
They're
quilts.
like paintings.
Yes, they are. Actually, in my house, I've got quilts on all the walls, or just about. This one is also a wall quilt. It's a takeoff on a traditional pattern. It's called Lucky Penny. It won first place in this category. It won a Quilters Award, and it also won a memorial ribbon. And the memorial ribbon was from the Melba and James Diamond. Point out, this is another one of Melba's quilts. It utilizes a panel, which she then added to. This again is one of Melba's, and she used a panel and used a totally different design on the outside. This design of the fabric, the way she places the fabric, is called a French braid. That's it on this thing. This quilt, although it didn't win any ribbons, this uses a very whimsical panel in the center, which she set off with a lot of different strips of fabric that we would call a jelly roll race. This quilt was made, it's a wall quilt. It was constructed, pieced, and appliqued, and also quilted by one person, and it got a Quilters Award and a third place ribbon. This quilt was given the Pride of Hopkins County Award. This area is called our Trinkets and Treasures, and all of the guild members put items in. Hopefully they're mostly quilt related, and everyone shops here. It's kind of like a garage sale for quilters. This quilt over here got a quilting award. This quilt is called Crossing the Brazos, and it's made with 50 different threads and 20 different fabrics. This is not a panel. It was made by a lady in College Station, and it goes all over. It's entered in a lot of different shows. It's been awarded by quite a few people. It got a third place in this show, amazingly enough. Behind us, this quilt over here got a quilting award. You notice she does a design called Feathers, and it also changes as she goes down. She uses a lot of different techniques of quilting in this. This is a master quilt. This lady has won very many awards. This is our second place award. It's made by the husband and wife team. The husband designed the quilt and did some of the piecing, and his wife did the remainder of the piecing as well as the quilting. This is by Floyd and Wilma Moss, and they are guild members. We actually have 3 male guild members. This quilt over here won a memorial ribbon for excellence in applique. This was made by a lady who used to be in our guild, but unfortunately she moved away with her kids, but she's still in the local area. These are our miniature quilts. They need to be 24 inches on each side or less. This one is the second place winner. It's called Red Feathered Star. That's the design over here. This one got an honorable mention. The interesting fact here is this quilt, which is way beyond 24, way smaller than 24 by 24, was made and hand-pieced with remnants that she had from previous quilts. Quilters never throw anything away, which is why we always say that our stashes grow when we make small piece quilts. Well, but go back over here. This is another master's quilt. It's called Fabulous Friends, and it got an honorable mention. This was a first place quilt. This is by one of our members, and it's an improvisational quilt. She has fabrics that go together. She's got buttons. She's got pieces of fabric that she's used in other quilts in there. Just comes together. She's very creative. This one is a third place quilt, and it has some embroidery on it as well as the piecing. These are some more of our miniature quilts. This is a more modern quilt, and although it did not get a ribbon, this one was made by Melba Diamond, and it is totally different from her other quilts that she's done. She moved into a different area of quilting, which you can do very easily since there are so many areas. This quilt got a first place award. This is in art and modern quilts. It's got embellishments, the sequins that are on it. It's got some thread painting. It's just, there's no pattern for it. This was just, designed by the quilter. This quilt over here is a one panel. The panel itself is made by Hoffman Fabrics. Some of them are in multiple colors. This one is in monotones of cream and white. This won an honorable mention, and it also won a quilting award. This quilt is also an original design, and this won a quilting award. This quilt down here is an original design, again in modern, and this one won 3rd place. This quilt, you'll notice, is exactly the same panel that the other one is, but it's quilted quite differently, and it's also quilted in what's called other techniques. It was entered in a different category, and it got 3rd place. This quilt was given the President's Award. It's a quilt that the president of our guild thought was pretty extraordinary. And that award is only given to guild members. Behind me is another modern quilt which was given an honorable mention. These 2 quilts are done by another one of our male quilters, although they don't have any awards. He's an avid biker, and that's what these are depicting. He's a fairly new quilter. This quilt is in other techniques, and it's embroidered, as well as this is all embroidery, and it's hand embroidery, not machine, and it's also quilted. This is an unusual quilt, and it got an honorable mention. It's made by an artist who's nationally known. This one is called Dreaming of a Better Future, and it's Martin Luther King. He only does faces, portraits. This is his John Lennon quilt, which, when you step back, you can really see that it's John Lennon. And it was given a Quilter's Award as well as an honorable mention. This quilt was also made by the team of Floyd and Melba Moss. Floyd and Wilma Moss, sorry. It's a 2nd place. Floyd did the design, and Wilma did most of the sewing and the quilting. It got a 2nd place in Art and Modern, as well as a quilting award. This is another, this quilt is called It's a Jungle Out There, and it is our 1st place winner in what we call other categories, because it's got a lot of other techniques in it, not just plainly one particular thing. This is also in the category of other techniques, and it got an honorable mention. And right next to it is a quilt that got a memorial award. Behind you is a quilt that got a quilting award. And if you look at you'll see the greatest variety of quilting on this. It's got some piecing over here, and it's got a lot of embroidery through here.
Can I get you a bag there, lady? I have one.
Now, these quilts that we're going to see right now are made by our junior quilters. Some of them are guild members, some of them are not. They range in age from they're mostly between 11 and 13 this year, or 14. 3 of them are made by boys.
You're at a dollar now.
Or 4 of them are made by 3
You're a
boys.
dollar
Let's just
now.
put it that way.
These now I can't do. Yes, they are. Good. So that's 25, 75.
Right here is our special exhibit. This feature is only for guild members, and it goes along with our theme, and it's called Shining Stars.
Oh, we got plenty of there. I need a second bag.
I like
Okay.
this.
This is the first place quilt. This is the 3rd place quilt. And this is the 2nd place quilt. All with the theme of stars. We also usually have a few it's on there. This was a Red River Quilt Guild entry. They are antique quilts. This is a quilt that won 2nd place in the other techniques category. It's one of the lady astronauts who went up in space who was a quilter. And so it honors her. And it got 2nd place.
It's big.
And just to be a little bit of a spoil sport, this is our raffle quilt for 2020. We always display it at our show, and this is what we will be selling our raffle tickets for chances to win this. You'll get them from guild members, and you can see it on our website, which is sulphurspringstexasquilts.com. And that's the Quilt Show. We have a children's area. And the kids can play and make quilt blocks along the wall. And we also have a scavenger hunt for them to find different elements that are in the quilts. They go around and gets them to really look at the quilts and find those. We try to do something for the kids every year. And the only other thing is if you look up along the railing, these are all quilts that members have put up for display only to give us a little bit more visual impact. And some of these quilts were previously shown in a quilt show, but they're also just for display right now. And that's a tour of the 20th Sulphur Springs Quilt Show by the Lone Star Heritage Quilt Guild.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I believe we covered just about everything.
I think we got everything.